What's going on, family? All right, it is your top down analysis for Sunday, May 17th through Friday, May 22nd. All right, so we had a lot going on last week. We hit around about 1500, a little under 2000 pips with the early Sunday move and then the move to the upside where we didn't quite come back above that to hit that last week's high, right? And we started getting those lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows. But we covered a good bit of ground throughout the market last week. Depending on whether or not you got in this sell, you saw a good number of pips here as well. So again, congratulations to all that did make some money last week. So, before we get into what we can expect this week and a quick recap, let's start with our economic calendar. All right, so Monday, May 18th, no red folders for USD. Tuesday, no red folders for USD. We've got some orange folders, some cautionary folders for USD, but nothing that would bring about a lot of volatility. Wednesday, we do have at 2 o'clock FOMC meeting minutes. This is also, remember guys, the start of the new 4-hour candle. So this is significant because again, you could be, let's just say market is selling right around that 2:30, 3 o'clock hour. You start seeing market reverse sharply. Okay, so going from a sell to a buy. Those red folders, you just want to make sure anytime you see those red folders, just as a reminder, you want to make sure that you have your trades buttoned up. So you're taking partials, you're closing your trades out, or your risk management is on point, right? So again, just as a reminder, make sure you got that written down or in your calendar. Thursday, no red folders, just some cautionary orange, and Friday, no red folders. So from an economic standpoint, it doesn't look like, in terms of the reports, we're going to see a lot of volatility there. Now, let's talk about fundamentals when it comes to global. All right. Before we even get into this, let me go back to let's talk about, let me see if it's on here. If not, then I don't see it. If I don't see it. If not, we will talk about it from my notes. Okay, so major news worldwide. Trump met over the weekend, met with the powers that be in China and Taiwan. The news of the meeting was overall positive, so it was a lot of hope talk. Tariffs were not discussed, but both parties were happy. So we will likely see reduced geopolitical tensions when it comes to tariffs in that region. Again, Taiwan, China, Southeast Asia, that region. However, the Iran war, of course, y'all know is still going on. The Strait of Hormuz continues to be a point of contention for both parties. As a reminder, that's the water strait for global oil and energy supply. So we will likely see increased and continued tensions unless we have, again, more Trump talk, Trump coming out, giving the hope verbiage. So negotiations are underway. The strait is being opened back up for all to use, et cetera, et cetera. But for now, right, let's go back. For now, we're seeing that from a U.S.-Iran standpoint, they're far from making the deal. Trump is saying the clock is ticking, so they got to button up, or powers that be got to button up. We got to bring this to a close, et cetera, et cetera. All right, time is of the essence, as y'all. So yeah, so we still have a lot going on there. Now, if we're looking at it just strictly from the fundamentals, all right, let me go back to my notes real quick. Bam, from a fundamental standpoint and how that affects the market. If we continue again throughout this week, see that there's no hope talk, there's no negotiations, there's no any of that, and those fundamentals continue to override a lot of what we're seeing. Let's see, from override the technicals. We'll say that we will continue to see oil prices rise due to demand. Higher oil prices typically will strengthen inflation expectations, which places support on the US dollar. If there's support for the dollar rises, which puts more pressure on gold. So anything y'all know that the dollar does, gold does the opposite, vice versa. So if we see rising support for the dollar or continued demand for oil, then we will see bearish pressure, sales, etc. on gold. All right. So from an overall technical standpoint, even though we are at a major demand level right now, being at 4,500, I could still see her going either way. Meaning I could see her popping up for a buy, at a certain area, hitting a certain area and then falling further. I can definitely see that before an actual swing. Okay, I do believe that we're going to get a nice swing buy upcoming, but we're just gonna have to follow the money, see how price action reacts at open. So in terms of levels, let's talk about that. We've got 4840 being our major supply, 4500 major demand, 4640 as our current mid-range point. Okay, so let's bring up the chart. I'm going to go over what happened last week real quick, just as a whole, and then we will begin this upcoming week. I already got the chart marked up. All right, so last week, after we hit, our buy here, also here, we failed to bring us back to the same high point as of Sunday, Monday. Once we hit this Asia high on the 12th, we continue to see her making lower highs, lower highs, lower highs. Now, Thursday, this is what I wanted to get into. Thursday, after the midweek review, for those who watched it, you all would have known that I was basically looking at sales for the remainder of the week. Like, y'all know I don't trade Fridays, but for those who do trade on Fridays and were looking for any type of positions for Thursday, I was looking at sales. Why? Because once we failed primarily to come above this high, which happened right at London, we were ranging, failed to come above. We spiked up, but we failed to come above this high. And then number two, during New York for that following day on Thursday, we were kind of skating around this demand area, this blue box, right? We were skating around this area, but once we dropped, came in, closed, and basically closed below here, she dropped pretty viciously down, all right, leaving a fair value gap. Okay, so this was the fair value gap here, these yellow boxes, excluding this one, which is actually ranging consolidation. But these yellow boxes were all fair value gaps. So we left a fair value gap here. On Thursday, on the mid to end week review, I said these black lines were the areas that I was looking at for possible entries for the sell. I said we could either drop below, break retest, drop below this 4630, and you could wait for us to drop below this weekly trend line here and continue down. Because if we break below here, we're definitely continuing on the sell. Now, if you wanted to get in earlier, the entry was either one of these black areas. This is primarily where I was looking at for an entry, because this was the fair value gap that we did that we saw right before Asia. So this happened in New York, right? We popped up, gave us a little bit of resistance here, didn't quite come back above. So this candle served as that fair value gap. 50% of this candle is this black line. Okay, I want to say 38%, I believe, is this one. So 50% would have been this area. And as you can see, we drove back into this fair value gap, gave price gave us about 50%. We immediately got rejection, right? And then we just had a continuous fall. She just melted. Um, so hopefully, those that did, some of y'all did get into it. If not, you all kind of followed price action so that you can see exactly the move and what happened. Because again, price does the same thing over and over and over. All right, so that's where we ended the week. So we ended the week, we touched this, that not quite came down to 4,500, but very close, 45.12, 45.10 area, popped up, ranged, and then Friday she pretty much fell back exactly where she started. All right, on at the beginning of the session. So coming into this week, I do want to show you guys, just so y'all can see the continuous correlation between DXY and oil. I know we talked about it on the notes, but it's another thing just kind of seeing it visually. So this is DXY. This is the markup for the week. This was last week's high, last week's low. So this is your minor resistance, your minor support inside of a major resistance area. And again, this is the dollar. All right. So pretty much starting from the last week in April, for lower highs, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low. We hit this area, this demand area on Monday. Okay. Last week, broke above, retested this 4-hour trend line, again, showing the areas of liquidity where prices just, again, collecting, right? Broke above, came back and retested. That's where this wick is here, right? And then we broke above, so we had a break of structure. We had bearish sentiment. Now we've broken into bullish. So this is how we continued from really Monday, the London session, on into Friday. Okay, so now we're watching to see from the dollar standpoint if we are going to continue, if price will continue following this 4-hour trend line or respecting this area for a continuation up. That would mean price to break above our this minor resistance, come back to retest this for support, and close to hit the next major resistance area, right? To continue up. So we could see that. We could also see price coming back down to hold this resistance or for reject this, and use this 4-hour trend line, this 4-hour area, which is right now holding as support. We can either break through that or hold it. Okay, so this is where we are from the US dollar standpoint. I do think that she's going to continue to bounce up from where she is now. Again, we'll just have to see if we're gapping up or down. From the US oil, let's see, US oil, you can see literally the exact same chart, right? Literally exact same. We had a gap where price gapped up, break of structure, break of structure, or the break and retest back to this 4-hour trend line to hold what was once resistance is now support, and now we're following this trend line. Same rules apply. We would need to see her break above here for a continuation, right? To this next major zone. All right, this is our supply zone up here, our major supply zone, but to continue to the next major zone, which would really be here, here, and then here, we would need to see that strong break and retest above. Now, bringing it on to gold, okay? From a 4-hour standpoint, higher time frame standpoint, we talked about this last week. We have been pretty much respecting the weekly trend line here, here, here. We broke above here, but immediately caught resistance at 47, 72, 75, depending on your chart. And then we broke below, broke to the downside. And this is where she was unable to hold that same higher low, higher high structure. So now the zones that we're looking at going into this week, major level from major zones from a technical standpoint, 4840, the supply, 4500, that's where we are in terms of demand. 4640 is my midpoint or my consolidation ranging zone. This is where the market typically ranges, consolidates before choosing a direction. Right now we are at very close to that major demand level where we can usually expect that bullish movement. You know, again, here are the possibilities that I was telling you about before. So structurally bearish, lower high, lower low. We got heavy resistance. 4800 and 4700 are still major buy and sell zones. 4800 is a major supply zone, resistance. 4700, because we are below that 4600 area, we're technically bearish. Okay. So from a buy scenario, I'm gonna give y'all both buy and sell. Let's look at it. Price holds below, or rather, price holds the key level of 4500 through Asia, London session, etc. We break, retest, and close above that 4590 to 600 zone. We would likely see a continuation to that next midpoint of 4640. I also have 4630 because 4630 was major, once was the mid-range point, not last week, I want to say the week before. 4630 is the area that we were looking at that week before, 4630 to 4660. Right now, we're right back at that same zone, being the mid-range. Then from there, we could see a continuation swing possibility to the next major resistance zone targets, 4700, 1530, and then larger swing would be 4800. Okay. Now from a sales standpoint, we would see her, since she is again right at our weekly daily low. This is our weekly trend line. Both of these weekly trend line holding, you can see resistance, support. This is what I can see from a sales standpoint, her coming up to this area. This is where we would likely see some possible resistance, either resistance or an immediate rejection. Okay, so that 4590 to 4600. I'm saying this area first because 4590, 4600, this is major psychological zone, right? So this is a heavy zone here that both buyers and sellers have defended in the past. So we could see her come above here. And this again falls right in line with my weekly trend line where she broke. Okay, so here, here, here. So we could see her coming here, seeing immediate rejection from the highs where she leaves wicks, and then coming below, closing below, retesting back to that same area for resistance now, right? Continued resistance, and then a continuation down. So either to back down to this same area, 4540, or that to close out that that bit of liquidity here at demand area 4500. Now beyond that, I could see levels as of 4350 would be the lowest. 4490, I could see 4490, 4410, and the lowest being 43.50. So 45, yeah, 43.50 would be the lowest, 44.10, and then 45.90. Now, this area, again, this is where we had the last little bit of liquidity. I never say never, but the likelihood of her coming down here again is to me, it's not that high. I really don't see her dropping that low, but it's quite possible that we could see 43.50 as that area. Why? Because this is right along where we had the last, not right here, but right here, right along where we had the last real area of support before that jump. Okay, so 43.50 could be a swing if we continue continue to break below these minor support areas, weekly trend line on both higher time frames, and then also that this demand area. This could be a pretty nice swing from here, even from the 4,500 to 43.50. That would be a nice swing. So that's what I'm looking at. Again, from the buy side, from an illustrative standpoint, we could see her. I'm gonna get this a little bit bigger. From an illustrative standpoint, we could see her coming up, right, gapping up, breaking above this weekly trend line. You know, coming up, we would need to see her come back down to retest this area, and then a continuation to the mid-range where we would likely see consolidation. Another area, this is where we last had the break of structure, so we would see probably some pullback, resistance here, and then here. Okay, so I would say your 46.30 to 46.40. I gotta throw 46.30 in there because of the fact that that was a highly visited area. So our mid-range to last area of where we have break of structure, that 4,700 to 4,715, and then the weekly daily high. Okay, so that's what I'm looking at. I don't really have a bias, to be honest with you. I'm just this week I'm just really following price action. I'm following to see what we're actually doing and what she's actually showing us. All right, so make sure you mark up your zones. I will drop my zones here in the chat so y'all can see it for the week. The thing that would absolutely give us the buys, I mean strong buys that we're looking for, and then I'm gonna wrap it up. The strong buys that we're all looking for, because I do see a nice swing by a nice swing to the top coming. Fundamentals, we got it. Trump got to come out saying, giving all that hope talk, you know, negotiations looks good, we're coming to a close, and like I said last week, in my opinion, the US has all the incentive to just, not just the US, but just from a global standpoint, has all the incentive to wrap this up as soon as possible. We got the elections coming up, we got midterms coming up in terms of elections, from a political standpoint and from a just global standpoint. Everything is a domino effect. So if oil, US dollar is going up, this is affecting a lot of other markets. But again, we'll just have to follow the price. Just got to follow the price. So hopefully you guys will have your charts marked up. If you have any questions, drop them in the chat. Let's have an awesome week. I see a lot of beautiful moves coming. So see y'all at the beaches and the banks.